Today, the federal government knows who purchased U.S. savings bonds when the bond was purchased. They know the identity of the beneficiary, most importantly, when that bond stopped earning interest. And yet, the federal treasury sits on that pile of money. $26 billion nationally, $1 billion here in Illinois, instead of returning it to their rightful owners. That's right. The federal government has the ability to pay these individuals, and it simply has chosen not to do so. Our request is simple. Trump's Treasury should surrender the money to each state so that in turn, each state can search the beneficiaries and return to them the rightful beneficiary. That is the core mission of the Illinois State Treasurer's Office, to seek out and return unclaimed property. We returned a record $239 million last year, the fourth consecutive year in which we set a record. You all remember savings bonds. I'm betting there are several people here in this room who've received one and might still have one. For generations, U.S. savings bonds offered a safe investment and a guaranteed return. Workers had money automatically deducted from their paychecks to purchase these bonds. They were given as a go-to gift for birthdays, holidays, and graduations. The bonds at issue go back into the 1930s. Typically, the bonds matured in 30 years, so it's likely that the federal government has been sitting on this money and benefiting from it since the 1960s. Moving forward, it will only grow more difficult for families to know if they have misplaced a bond. That's because paper bonds were phased out in 2010. In 2011, only electronic versions were available for purchase. There is an easy way for the President and Congress to solve this government-created problem. And that simply is to change the federal law and to close this loophole. The Trump administration wastes enough of our money. It should not be allowed to block Illinois families from obtaining the proceeds of matured savings bonds. Today, there is bipartisan legislation that would turn over these unpaid bonds. However, the legislation faces a dim future unless the President comes out in favor of it. He must do so strongly, publicly, and without equivocation. He can use Twitter if he so chooses, but he must do so quickly. Remember, these bonds are a loan to the federal government from families of simple, honest means. They earn a fixed rate of interest over a fixed period of time. And when that time expires, the savings bonds cease to earn interest. If unpaid, the federal government benefits from the initial loan as well as the unpaid interest. So often, we talk about common sense to address our challenges. I cannot think of anything more straightforward than this legislation. All we are asking is for the federal government to close a loophole and give us the authority to reunite people with their U.S. savings bonds. Congressman Davis, I want to thank you for your co-sponsorship of this legislation, for your fight, for joining me here today. I would welcome you to share some of your thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I am United States Representative Danny Davis, and I'm pleased to be here with the Honorable Mike Frerichs, the Treasurer of our great state, to urge President Trump to use the influence of his office to pass legislation, bipartisan legislation, that will allow the federal Treasury to surrender unpaid U.S. savings bonds to their rightful owners. The U.S. Department of Treasury is not required to try and find the owners of unpaid savings bonds that have matured. Some of these bonds, as we've already heard, were issued as early as the 1930s and have matured in the 1960s. So that's a long time. In Illinois, these unpaid matured bonds have an estimated value of $1 billion, and nationally, $26 billion. $1 billion is a lot of money, even for a state like Illinois. And can you imagine what the utilization of that money could do to help stimulate the economy, to help make it more vibrant, and to keep money moving back and forth from the hands of people to the merchants, to other people. That's what makes an economy strong. Bipartisan federal legislation to close this loophole will pass if President Trump publicly declares his support. Now, of course, in the House of Representatives, we will pass this bill. It's in the committee that I serve on. It's in the Committee on Ways and Means. The Estes-Davis bill, or the Davis-Estes bill, which I am co-sponsoring with my Republican colleague, Representative Estes from Kansas, who used to be the state treasurer. These state treasurers have a tendency to think alike and to know things that are valuable alike. The money that we're talking about should be made available to its rightful owners so that it can be put to work right back into our economy to keep it vibrant, energized, and growing. In Illinois, again, we're talking about $1 billion. I want to thank my colleague, my partner in this, Representative Estes, for sponsoring with me this important legislation. And I want to thank our state treasurer for raising the issue in Illinois, for using the good office that he holds to share information and raise issues that are of value to the citizens of this great state. Of course, citizens can help also. They can help by simply calling President Trump's office, asking him, admonishing him, suggesting to him that he be supportive. And then, of course, you can call your representatives in the House and your representatives in the Senate and share with them the value of supporting the Davis-Estes bill. We have actually passed 275 bills out of the House this year that has not moved in the Senate. And so we simply want to make this money available. I don't know, I know I don't have any, but who knows, somebody in my family may have purchased a bond in the 1930s or the 1940s. And that money should be put into the hands of people that it belongs to. They then can make great use of it. Again, I thank our state treasurer for his partnership in this effort. And if there are any questions, we would be delighted to respond.
Congressman Davis, since you're standing there, may I just ask you quickly, has this been proposed to your knowledge on the Hill before, or is this one of the first requests?
I think it's been proposed, hasn't moved, but we're prepared to move it out of the House. As a matter of fact, we are passing such great legislation in the House until almost every week I have to pinch myself and say, is this real? Did we just pass this? I had 2 of my bills passed last Thursday. Both of them bring in valuable resources to the state of Illinois. We want to add this one to the many that are coming.
Then your behavior you're taking to the president on this one is to make sure that if it gets out of the House, or if it doesn't get out of the House, when it goes to the Senate, that it's going to go through there. That's why you're calling on him to take the action, right?
Well, we know that the House will pass it. I'm saying it's been vetted with members of the House. It's been vetted in the Committee on Ways and Means. and we pass from time to time. The value of having members of both parties sponsor. Representative Estes is a respected member of the House. He's a member of the Ways and Means Committee, as I am. He is a Republican. And so we have a bipartisan measure that all we've got to do is get the Senate in reality. I mean, I have no qualms at all as to whether or not the House will pass it. And we just want to make sure that the Senate will pass it and that the President will sign it so that money can begin to flow back into the state of Illinois. And we can go to McDonald's, we can go to wherever, and we can spend it, and then somebody else can benefit from it, and it keeps moving.
Thank you. Mr. Frerichs, it sounds like you're just saying to the federal government, we're ready to do the legwork for you.
Yeah, we have a program in place to help return money to Illinois citizens. It has worked well. Every year for the last 4 years, we have broken records in unclaimed property returned. This last year, nearly $250 million. We tend to work with all of our constituents. We tend to work in a bipartisan fashion. And that's why I was very excited to see Congressman Davis leading on this issue. This is actually not something out of character for Congressman Estes. When he was the Republican treasurer from Kansas, I can tell you on policy issues, there were great disagreements between him and I. But we worked together to set up the National ABLE Network. This is savings accounts for people with disabilities. ABLE stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience, and Kansas was our strong partner on this. And so I'm glad to see him working with Congressman Davis in order to get common sense legislation passed to get money back into the hands of its rightful owners.
Which you can do if it's in a safety deposit box.
Very good. So if there is a savings bond that was put in a safe deposit box and forgotten about and turned over to us, we have the ability, and we've done this many times, return this to its rightful owners. But just like a corporation that's holding on to money that doesn't belong to them, if they can't find the rightful owners, they turn it over to the State Treasurer's office. We're asking the same thing of the federal government. They know they're sitting on billions of dollars that belongs to U.S. citizens, and we would like to aid them. We'd like to help them in returning it to the rightful owners. We don't have to create a new bureaucracy. We don't have to hire new people to do this. We are already set up with employees to do it, and thanks to the effort of Congressman Davis, we think we're a step closer to doing that. But together, we're calling upon President Trump because we find that's the only real way to get movement in the Senate.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.